Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe, and today we're going to be talking about the Grayscale complaint. I realized I missed part of the intro there. I'm your host, Di D'Amato. This is brought to you by Design Systems House. You already know that, though. So it's Monday, new week. Like I mentioned last week, it was a really rough week in terms of lots of things going on. But my wife and I had some opportunity over this past weekend to recoup. So now we're feeling a lot better, a lot more energized. You could kind of tell already, I think, in my voice and mannerisms, hopefully. But I'm not 100%. I'm still having some difficulty in the ear, but hopefully that subsides over the time. I do have a couple of things I wanted to talk about that came up. Actually, there was something that came up late in the day on Friday. Hopefully I get to talk about it tomorrow, but I do want to do a little bit more of a dive into what it was, and I'm going to be a little bit ambiguous there just to not, necessarily provide too much information, just so that you tune in for the next Wireframe episode where I talk about whatever that is. But today, we're talking about something called the Grayscale complaint. And the reason that we're talking about the Grayscale complaint is because there was a post that triggered me. That's really what it is. There was a post that triggered me, and it is the latest post on Smashing Magazine. So as of today, and today is, I believe, the 12th of October, 2025, there's a post upon here, on the top, we'll just show it here real quick. It's by Frederick O'Brien, and it's called The Grayscale Problem. And in this post, here's the summary. The summary says, from A/B tests to AI slop, the modern web is bleeding out its color. Standardized, templated, and over-optimized is starting to feel like a digital Levittown, but it doesn't have to be. Okay. So I know right from the title and the summary, before I even read this article, and I did read the article, I knew what this was all about. Okay. It seems that Frederick here is complaining that everything is becoming effectively cookie cutter when it comes to web design, I suppose, right? Yeah, modern web. Okay. And I have someone that's in my circle that is similar to this in terms of their frustration with the lack of creativity. I'll use the word creativity just because I think that's what people think the problem is. So they're having a frustration with the lack of difference that's out there when it comes to the web. And I'm very familiar with this attitude, this direction, which is, again, a lot of the reason why I have my talk later in this month at Converge that talks about creativity and the constraints within it. But I know this sounds like a problem. The thing is, it's not a problem, it's a complaint. Because there's no problem with something being grayscale or being cookie color. It's a preference that you have in order for it to look more personalized or feel more vibrant or something of that nature, to introduce emotion. But when it comes to the product has to work. And whatever color of paint that you put on it, that's extra, right? And it has become much easier for us to churn out the same thing over and over again that works, as opposed to iterating on things that might not, right? Because that might end up being wasteful. But I want to go through some of the points in the article. It's a pretty short article by Smashing Magazine standards. But let's just go through it and talk about some of the pieces that it says. So Frederick mentions about how cars are getting less colorful. And here's some examples of those less colorful cars. They all look effectively like the same car. Granted, I don't really see this on the road. I drive, and I don't really see a lack of color on the road necessarily. I think, people, when you're driving your car, you don't really notice the color of your car as much as you notice the interior of your car. So I think the interiors of these are probably what's different, relatively speaking, as opposed to the exterior. but grayscale problem. So he's outlining the grayscale problem here about, but it's saying its state is not healthy from AI slop. Yes, that's a problem. To shoddy service providers, also a problem. To inshodification, also a problem. But grayscale is not a problem. And here's one of the things that I actually I like that he called out, which is Geocities as the personal blogging platform. I like that he called this out because this is a great example of what people believe to be as something creative. This is a very creative, kind of design site. Other than, yes, it has a left nav. Yes, it has some banner at the top. Yes, it has some content gallery. But the way that it's presented is very unique, especially in today's standards. Maybe not, maybe not in Geocities back in the day. But the thing that he's calling out here about the formative years of the internet being so exciting. Yeah, this is exciting, but the thing is about this is that it's not as usable as sites today. You see, let me bring back to me for a second here. Back in the day of like Geocities, it was essentially the wild, wild west of web design, right? We were trying things out. We were seeing if this felt right, this didn't feel right, what worked best here, what worked best there. But eventually, we kind of gravitated toward what is effectively best practice. What's on Geocities is not best practice. I'm just going to tell you outright there. Okay? And it's the same for the car analogy, right? The car analogy back years ago, cars are potentially being built bespoke, right? Before the assembly line. We're just going to go ahead and put pieces together and hopefully they fit. And it's, one-offs here and very expensive, of course, back in the day. But now, because we have things like the assembly line and standardized parts, a lot easier, a lot better, a lot faster, just overall better experience to put together and also to maintain. Because if everything ends up being a bespoke experience like Geocities, makes it much harder to maintain and much harder to use because if let's say, the steering wheel on my particular car being a bespoke steering wheel is like a square because I liked that. Maybe it's just not ergonomic for most people. And now that particular steering wheel would need to be replaced for an ergonomic steering wheel that works for a lot more people than this fun square one, which is less usable but more fun for the sake of being fun. So that's the thing that I'm trying to bring out here is that we didn't land on anything in the web. We worked toward trying to figure out what the right thing for the web was going to be. It's actually very aligned to my concept of design attractors, which I had a blog post a couple weeks ago about, which is trying to fall in or settle into design patterns, right? So we fell into this, what is effectively what he's calling grayscale pattern, but we fell into a pattern that most people or many people would find usable and recognizable and all those things that are important in product design, right? That something is usable at the end of the day. After which we can go ahead and put some personality on. Let's keep it going. So moving over here. So yeah, this is a good call out here that monopolies are a little bit to blame in this particular case, right? Because what he's outlining here is that, a lot of the web is just a few sites, right? Google, Amazon, Facebook, Instagram, and ChatGPT, right? And they reduce variance, right? So, and I mean, we've even seen this kind of complaint with Google's icons for its products, right? The products look all the same. I should say the icons look the same for all the products, making it really hard to discern which product is which, right? And having some identity in there would definitely help. But from a product standpoint, when you're actually using the product, Google Docs works effectively the same as Microsoft Word, more or less, right? And practically any other word processing software would more or less work the same, right? We're talking about editing an art piece, right? Adobe Photoshop more or less works the same as something like Sketch or Figma. Yes, you could absolutely go ahead and start nitpicking about, no, it's actually, different because of this. Yeah, okay, from a very specific standpoint. But at the end of the day, you have a toolbar on top, you have some toolbars on the side, you have a large canvas in the middle. That's effectively what people are expecting. If you end up changing that significantly, just for the sake of being different, it could definitely cause people to not use your product because they're unfamiliar with it. And just for the sake of it being different is not good enough. So now, calling out here that a lot of templates are out there. Templates are a good thing. Templates are a good thing because, again, it maintains expectations for the users. If for whatever reason, the navigation for this thing ended up being, I don't know, halfway down the site, that's weird. It's unique, but it's weird. So we expect the navigation to be up on top so I can, immediately know what I'm dealing with, right? Now, here he calls out Levittowns. And if you don't know about Levittowns, Levittowns were a idea that you could effectively kind of copy and paste a town using effectively the same blueprint, same kind of house, and you just kind of put it all in this one neighborhood. And in fact, the first Levittown is right next door to where I live. It's called Levittown. I live right next door to actual Levittown, USA, or Levittown, New York, USA. My father grew up in Levittown. So I know quite a bit about that living there. But I also know about Levittowns in terms of the way that building a house takes a lot of effort. And granted, as much as you might want it to be unique and special and, this house is different from this house and making it, uniquely that family's house, it's not realistic. And in fact, that's a lot of the reason why we had such devastation in California for the wildfires. All of those houses were built in a similar way. Granted, people made modifications and stuff like that, but all those houses that ended up burning down was because we used the same materials and cheap materials and all wood and all that kind of stuff. The houses that stayed did the unique stuff, and this is a great feather in the cap of doing unique stuff. The unique fire retardant or even brick and mortar buildings were the things that maintain. And you go, well, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we doing brick and mortar for more houses? Well, it's just not cost effective. And there's more expertise involved for that stuff. Putting up a wooden house, you can get cheap, inexperienced labor effectively to go ahead and shoot these wooden houses up real fast. And generally speaking, the houses are fairly in good shape, right? They do the job. They let you live inside of it, right? The house that I'm recording this in right now is 80 years old. The houses in Levittown, I think, are fairly similar in that way, but it's still up, right? It's still doing the job. It's still the walls are up, the roof is on. You got to do some repairs. We had new windows that were put in at some point before we bought the house, and a new roof that was put in before we bought the house. So improvements are being made, right? But it's still the same house, And if I wanted to go ahead and make it something really special, there's a lot that goes into that. Right? There's a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of expertise that has to go into that. And admittedly, for what? For it to look cooler? Yeah, okay. But is it going to function any different? Maybe, right? Especially if we're talking about structurally if the house isn't doing so well, right? But we got this house very specifically for what it was offered. 3 beds, 2 baths, it's doing the job, right? So same thing with the cars, right? You're going on, it's got 4 wheels, it's got a steering wheel, a couple of seats. It drives from point A to point B, it's doing the job, right? There are absolutely certain people out there that want to have a more personalized experience. You're going to pay for that. But to just get people on the road moving from point A to point B, that's the majority of people that are out there. And they don't have the resources to go ahead and make them something bespoke. Nor do we have the ecosystem to support lots of bespoke things, right? Now, the web is really interesting in that because effectively we do have the resources to build bespoke things on the web. Heck, that's how I got started on the web. I got started on the web because when I would do interactive sculptures physically, those things are really expensive and not a lot of people see them. When you're able to do something interactive on the web, all you need is a computer, right? And a couple of lines of code, and boom, you can make an experience you can share with the world. It's huge, it's big, right? So when you're doing something artistic like that, that makes a lot of sense. But when you're making a product, a digital product, like many of the things that are listed out there are, you want that thing to be more meeting the expectations of all the users that are going to be using it, right? And that's why when you have something like the Levittown, when people walk into the Levittown, they know exactly what they're expecting. They know exactly the kind of house they're expecting, the kind of neighborhood they're expecting. They are having expectations met every single time. When you go into another neighborhood that's not so cookie cutter, right? As you know, you could walk into a neighborhood and not realize that it's the school district isn't so great, or this part of the town isn't so good, or these houses were flooded, right? Like lots of different variations that could happen there. But if you have, expectations that are met because the entire neighborhood was planned that way, I think that's a big benefit in terms of knowing what you're getting into. So anyway, moving right along. Let's keep it moving here. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, so let's just talk about AI and putting everything in here. Okay, so not railing against best practice. So this is important here, right? So he's saying that a lot of conventions have been standard for good reason, and one can easily shake their fist and wonder why all the newspapers look the same, books, the whole difference is clear. But the web is flexible enough that belongs in the realm of architecture. A city where all the buildings look alike is soul-crushing quality about it. The same is true, I think, of the web. Yeah, so this is a good point. This is absolutely a good point, right? Just like I mentioned earlier, it's a matter of the resources, right? When it comes to the architecture part, right, the physical resources, the manpower, the amount of lift that you need to do to make something completely different, right? That is really resource intensive. The web is really not that resource intensive. And it lends itself to being able to do lots of creative stuff. But again, that's from an artistic standpoint. I mean, look at awards.com, right, with the 3 Ws. There's so much personality in there, but the thing that us from the user experience profession usually rag on them about is that many of those things aren't usable. I don't know how to navigate, it's not clear how to navigate, or if I don't have a pointing device, maybe it's only for a keyboard, completely useless, right? All of that stuff is not thought through from an artistic standpoint, or I should say from a usability standpoint in an artist's rendition, right? But if you're doing art, right, like architecture for art, like the Guggenheim as an example, right, that circular building, that's fun. It's also not really efficiently using the space around because it's circular as opposed to being square, right? So the blocks of the city of Manhattan, there's open areas there, but maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe there's areas for more congregation around it. Maybe that was, the intention there. I don't know enough about that design, but the Guggenheim is also a product, right? Because it needs to handle users and people looking at the artwork that's inside of it. And there's, of course, gift shops and other things that need to be maintained in there. So there's product parts in there. But then you can give it an experience. You can, an expression on top of it, right? Which is that circular kind of spiral look of it that still makes it usable overall. It still maintains the usability. So with the web, it's low resource. I think that's the difference in terms of looking at some of the other products that are out there, is that web is low resource. Like you can go ahead and do a lot of different iterations of things, and that's a lot of the reason why I talk about how colors don't solve problems, right? I can add color to the web very quickly, right? With a couple of variables, boom, you can look completely different, right? With a very little effort. When it comes to something more physical, right? If I'm going to go ahead and, make a coffee table and I have to, paint it, the wood, pink or something like that, painting it pink, requires me to go out, get some pink paint. That's the word I was looking for. Go out, get some pink paint, come back home, prepare my work surface so not everything gets paint on it except for the table, right? Mask some things off. Then I can go ahead and spray paint it once, twice, 3 times for a nice good coat, right? Let it set between all those times. It's a lot of work, right? I need the space for that work. So it's just that in and of itself, plus the cost of materials, right? I mean, all that to say is just, it's a lot of work to make something personalized in the physical space. In the web, low resource, right? Let's go going here. So how do we get along with bringing about some variety, right? It's color, right? Color brings in some stuff first here. And then fonts and icons, yes. That's expressions, personalities, right? Talk about Bruno Simon, who's got a portfolio that does 3D work. Now, let's look at Bruno Simon's portfolio for a second, and hopefully it's still the old one, because, yeah, this one here. So this is Bruno Simon's portfolio, okay? And do not get me wrong. Wait for it to load. Do not get me wrong. It's a very impressive portfolio, okay? And if you haven't seen it, we're going to show it to you in a minute. It's a very impressive portfolio. And it really shows some exceptional creativity when it comes to art and interactivity and stuff like that. So let's take a look at this right here. All right, start. Okay, so what this has is the car. It's very slow, okay. What we're able to do is drive this car around. Ugh. If my computer had the ability to do so. And you can explore like this this world that he's built. And you have like lots of his projects and stuff like that. And it's fun. It's super fun. I'm going to stop that for a second because number one, my computer is not doing a great job with that, which is not a great experience, right? Number one. Number two, it is very unique, which from a creative side is good, but from a person who's trying to just see his work, like I've never had this kind of navigation before, so it's going to take me a really long time to navigate, to just see other stuff he's done. So like, I don't know how to just see some practical work of his as opposed to, you know, whatever this fun thing is. Does he have practical work? Does he only do 3D stuff? If he only does 3D stuff, maybe that's not something I need right now, right? Meanwhile, a 3D artist, right, is he specifically a 3D artist? Because it looks like he only works on the web, and I need, like, I don't know, an After Effects person or something like that. It's not entirely clear to me here, right? So that's what I'm kind of like trying to call out in this particular case is, yeah, like it's impressive, but, and creative, but is it solving a problem? I don't know. I don't know if it's solving a problem. And yeah, it's an attitude of just trying stuff out. Let's keep going here. It's an attitude of just trying stuff out, right? Add an Easter egg, add some personality. I like that stuff. It's not a problem though. It's not a problem. Talking about A/B tests. Okay, and he does end with this Minecraft thing here. Okay, I'll read this out here. There's a reason why Minecraft is the world's best-selling game. People are creative. When given the tools and the opportunity, that creativity will manifest in weird and wonderful ways. That game is a lot of things, but Gray ain't one of them. I'm sorry to say, but Gray is one of the things that's actually in Minecraft. Not in the literal sense, it's in the figurative sense. Because what we're talking about here is much more about meeting expectations, okay? And a product. Right? When we're talking about stuff that we're calling out between, you know, Google and ChatGPT and those products that he's complaining about somewhat, you know, the sites that you use every day, those things are products. And the creativity is based in the world of the product, meaning that, like I mentioned about the word processing earlier, right? The canvas that you're working on in the word processor, the text that you're typing, that's where your creativity is. So all the stuff around it is meant to fade into the background, to get out of the way of you being creative, right? We're talking about drawing applications, right? The Chrome that's in the drawing application is allowing you to focus on the canvas so that you can be creative in the canvas, Right? If you were to be distracted by stuff around it, it's going to take you away from the creativity. In fact, I think someone was actually mentioning about the new Notion AI like button that's on the bottom right-hand corner that has this like face. It's kind of reminiscent of Clippy back in the day. And because there's a little animation on it, it's actually distracting while a person is reading the Notion document. And in some cases, it even looks like it's staring at your Notion document, kind of like judging you, which is not a good feeling either, right? So even those little things, those little moments that you claim are things that are giving personality can have a completely different and potentially even detrimental result that you didn't think about from another person's perspective. And an easy way to avoid that is to actually tone down the personality, right? Toning down the personality is not a bad thing. It actually could be a good thing because it'll focus on the task at hand, unless we're talking about an artistic representation, right? If it's truly meant to be artistic, there's nothing product related about it. If it's truly meant to be artistic, that makes a lot of sense. My comment about Minecraft having grayscale is that the grayscale is not the color of Minecraft. The grayscale is that everything is a cube. The whole thing is cubes, right? You're not dealing with the ability of making like a sphere because it would be easier to roll, right? Like, ooh, I need to make a car, so I need to make a cylinder. Oh, wait, it's not letting me make a cylinder. Well, this thing sucks. It's not letting me be creative, right? That's the same argument. That's like saying this is the cube problem of Minecraft, right? The expectation inside of Minecraft is that you are trying to build things. So we're going to give you lots of different tools to be able to build things. And admittedly, I've never played enough Minecraft at all. I've just seen a lot of videos of it. But I'm assuming that the blocks that are in there, you're building things from. So it's the same kind of thing. You are able to do lots of stuff in code if you wanted to, but ultimately the product needs to be fulfilled and meet user expectations, right? In a game setting, which Minecraft is a game. Is it a product? Well, as I understand it, there's two ways of playing Minecraft. There's a way of being able to effectively build your own thing. That may as well just be a canvas about it. But then there's this like survival part of it, right? The survival section where there's like, monsters chasing after you. You got to build things up and use resources, things of that nature. And again, I don't know enough about the game to have a real solid outlook about this, but overall, there's constraints in these things, right? And those, or in another way of saying this, things have tended toward a direction, right? And when it comes to trying to compare Minecraft to web design, I don't think they're really the same at all, Just because you're allowed to be creative. You're allowed to be creative in the web. It's just at a particular detriment that I mentioned earlier, like the detriments of not being able to maintain, not letting users understand what's going on because it's so new and novel, right? All that stuff is bad news. I wouldn't want to put my creativity against, losing user expectations. I mean, admittedly, I actually had this conversation just earlier today with some folks in the design system practice because, the folks were kind of asking me about like, do you have any kind of, opinions on craft or, that kind of thing? And I said, no, I'd much rather empower people who want to have opinions about craft. Because the more opinions you have about craft, the harder it is to get something out the door. Right? It's the more cooks in the kitchen, right? You'll never get the soup out, right? So if you have less opinions about something, it's more easy for that to be out the door and to get more, feedback about a particular experience. So if someone has an opinion about the way that something's supposed to look, go ahead, enjoy yourself. And in fact, I'm going to empower you such that you can make whatever changes that you think are important, right? With the caveat that I still want to make sure that things are usable first, right? So if you choose a color that's ultimately inaccessible, with a background and foreground, I'm going to say, let's not do that. Choose one or the other, and I'll have an algorithm choose the other color, because again, I don't have an opinion other than maintaining a contrast ratio, right? So if you want that that button to be purple, then the algorithm will choose white as text, right? If you want that button to be yellow, then the algorithm will choose the text to be black instead, right? And that algorithm is not based on my opinion, right? That algorithm is based off of relative luminance and math and calculations that have been done by people that are much more into color theory than either of us would have possibly have been, right? So that's where I want that expertise to come in. But when it comes to the actual final expression, which is again the whole thing behind mise-en mode, right, empowering people to provide their own expressions wherever they want in the interface, that's more important to me than me having an opinion about what color something should be. Because like I said, I don't think colors solve problems. But if somebody else wants that to be part of their world, they should absolutely do it. But let me know what you think about that. I don't think Grayscale is a problem. I think it's a complaint. It could be a valid complaint. I think, and I guess there's no such thing as a valid complaint. It is a complaint that a person could have, like Frederick, right? They could absolutely complain that things are grayscale and the soul-sucking, lifeless UIs that are out there. But the thing is, those things are easy to maintain. They manage user expectations, what we're expecting. And if something was to change, I think it's a lot more challenging to pay attention to. Speaking of that, let me bring something up real quick, because this aligns with another conversation that I was having, or I guess I kind of somewhat started on LinkedIn about some changes that Amazon was doing. Let me see if I can find it. Please bear with me, trying to find, here it is, I think. Is this my post, or is this her post? It might be her post, let me see. I think this might be somebody else's post that we both commented on, is that right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so let me bring this up real quick. I had a comment, I reposted this with a comment, but this is the original post that was on LinkedIn by Nick Bade. And what he's calling out, don't worry too much about the text here. I want you to look at this image, okay? This, on the left here, is what Amazon has looked like for a really long time, okay? This is what Amazon is beginning to look like from a experimentation standpoint. They're rolling some things out, okay? And I called this out on LinkedIn, but Marcella over at UPS had a really good take, because I'm going to read this out specifically. She said, "I saw this change and generally thought my experience was being hacked by a scammer. I closed out the order and intent and reopened the link to see the product and still getting this new experience. So I closed out, opened again, but couldn't find the product. So I didn't order the product that had been shown. My buyer intent was burned with the unexpected friction, and trust failed." Okay. This is what I'm talking about, folks. Okay. You want to try something new, you want to have a good time and see, okay, maybe blue buttons, that would work better, something like that. This is what you're up against, okay? It's unprompted, I didn't start anything like this or anything like that. This is just Marcella, who is a UX professional, right, but also a regular human being with an Amazon account, right, saying they went to an experience with an expectation. The expectation visually wasn't met. It was something completely new that they haven't seen before, especially in the purchase process. And then all of a sudden they go, hold on a second, this doesn't look right. And they eject. They didn't buy, right? That's the kind of thing that you have to be afraid of, okay? Because that trust, just because of the color of the button that you thought would be a fun experiment, goes right out the window, sales drop. That's the problem, okay? That's what we're talking about with this, Grayscale complaint, right? If this was effectively all grayscale, there's no, color in it necessarily. And effectively what we've known as Amazon, which was on the left-hand side, we think of that as grayscale. Yes, there's color in it, but we're not thinking about the color as we're dealing with the experience. right? We're not really thinking about that. We've just grown to accept that, okay, there's a yellow button and an orange button. And the yellow button adds to cart and the orange button buys now, right? Or whatever yeah, that looks right. So we just accepted it. So that acceptance, right? We've settled into, okay, now this is just washed over kind of grayscale to us. It's just the same experience over and over, over and over, over and over. And then all of a sudden, we change it, right? Now we've changed it. Now it's fresh and exciting, and we've lost the trust, right? Fresh and exciting, and we've now lost the trust of our users, right? Just because we thought it would be fun to change something. And maybe, of course, you would like to think it's Amazon, right? There must be data behind the change, right? They must have done some other testing before rolling it out that says, hey, this is going to perform better. We're pretty sure because of these metrics or whatever. We'd like to think that happened. I don't know that happened. I'm not sure of that at all. All I could see is this response. And I could absolutely have the same response, right? And I have had the same response looking at different product websites and purchasing paths and things like that, that where something looks out of place, I don't trust it anymore, right? And that's just a visual thing. Just a visual thing. It's not an API thing or necessarily even a structure thing. It is literally just something looks visually out of place, and I immediately begin to question my trust in the website. All right? But again, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any examples of this that you've seen in the wild down in the comments below. Or if you like, you could absolutely go ahead and join the Discord. What the hell? Why not? Go ahead and go down to discord.ds.house and go ahead and put in some information about that where it's appropriate, although I don't know where that would be appropriate in the Discord. I'm not sure. Find the channel. Share it in general. I don't care. Again, I don't know what's going on in Discord yet. Still trying to figure that out. Hopefully I never have to figure that out, quite frankly. But if you want, come on in. Yeah, that's what I want to talk about today. Let's talk about some event stuff that's going on. First off, if you're in New York City, UXDX is having an event on Wednesday at the Priceline offices. You can go to uxdx.com to find that out. Let me go ahead and take a quick peek at that. And I also want to share something else, but let me see here. UXDX, .com. Yeah, so uxdx.com. You can have all my, it should be under community, I believe. Let's see here. Yeah, here it is. So this event here, let me put it up on the screen. This event here is on the 15th. This is this Wednesday, and it's free, absolutely free. And we have a couple of folks that are going to be speaking here. We have Lorraine Lee, who's an author. Ryan's probably going to be asking some questions there, and then Nick Gold from Nick Gold Coaching, and then another panel we're going to have with a couple of folks. Chris Hamilton, Christina Goldschmidt, and Cindy Chastain will all be in attendance to talk about leading through the shift, what skills matter now, who gets hired, what happens to juniors. Interesting, really interesting stuff. So you could be a part of that, but also before I make a fool out of my let's see here. I just want to see if this is the right URL. Yes, it is. Okay. So a friend of ours, Hang, has made a site which is nycdesign.events, where you could find about all the events that are happening in New York City when it comes to design, which is super cool, right? So you have a whole bunch of stuff that's happening in here. This was last week, so we had a bunch of stuff there. We have this is, I think, Asian women design leaders here today. Karen Howe is for their new book also today. Kinference. I think I have some friends in town for this. I have to follow that up there actually. That was my arrow key going a little crazy there. The UXDX conference, and then the following week we have Empire of AI on the 22nd, RAID 7, whatever that means, and then there's a NYC Product Design Leaders meetup. Actually, I don't know what this is. I'll take a peek at that later. But yeah, if you are interested in some New York City, excuse me, God, design events, NYC Design.events. Thank you, Hang, for putting that together for the community. That's really helpful. And in terms of other things that are going on here, I don't think there's a question this week. I didn't see any emails about that, so I'm assuming we're off for that for this particular week. And I think that's it. I think we're just going to wrap it up here. It's been a nice show, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for joining me. Bye.